What's up, legends? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're jumping back into the Black Ops 7 Zombies beta, and of course, you know me, I had to do some challenge runs, so this one is going to be the no perk run that I did. Unfortunately, it's not live comp style, so basically going to be doing a voiceover explaining what I did, the strategy that I had, and how I was able to make it as far as I was. I did learn so much throughout this run, though, that I would probably do differently going into another one, and I'm actually considering popping up the stream sometime later today when you guys are watching this video and actually attempting this a couple more times. So if that sounds like something you guys are interested in, just make sure you're following me at twitch.tv/Errl in case I choose to go live and actually make some more attempts at this, just pushing that level a little bit further. But this definitely has me really excited and looking forward to the challenges come day one or just come launch of Black Ops 7 Zombies. All new weapons, all new maps, more survival maps to come, which I'm definitely looking forward to. I know survival's not for everybody, but if you've been a big watcher of this channel, then you pretty much know that this is something that would actually fit the type of runs that I typically do. So the first thing I did when I actually went in is I was using the MXR, which is the Rampart-like weapon. Definitely my favorite so far in the beta. Don't think it's the most strong weapon that you could utilize, obviously, because there is Ray Gun Mark II, and there's a couple of other odd and end weapons that you could pretty much pick up, but it's like the Coda pistol ends up being pretty strong. But some of these weapons that do end up being stronger obviously go through a little bit more ammo. But first things first, we actually got to turn on the power. I always do this right off the rip, pretty much just shoot the spores off the outside. Unless you're using a pistol, it's honestly pretty straightforward and easy to accomplish. And at least once I'm ready to turn on the power switch, I then go over and turn on the Rampage Inducer. Now, obviously, the Rampage Inducer isn't for everyone. You're not required to use it, but I will mention that they actually did nerf the Rampage Inducer in BO7, meaning that it won't actually have super sprinters until starting at round 20. So this gives you a lot more freedom in the earlier rounds. Yes, the zombies tend to be a little bit faster. Obviously, your skill level will determine whether or not you might want to run the Rampage Inducer, but it does help you get through those earlier rounds faster. And my favorite part of it is when you do get a power-up, especially toward the end of a round, you're able to actually take some advantage of it going into the next one. Now, once I build up enough points, I open up the barn, I get the power restored, and then I at least buy Pack Punch level 1 for my weapon, because I am planning on utilizing this weapon as much as possible throughout the run, and I don't know exactly how long it's going to take for me to get one of the Wonder Weapons, whether it's the Mark II ray gun or the regular ray gun, but starting at round 7, I just start going into the mystery box, grabbing a mystery box weapon, and feeding Chompy those weapons. Two things in mind. Number one, I'm either going to get salvaged to upgrade the rarity of the weapon that I'm currently holding, which is going to make the future runs a little bit easier, or future rounds, I should say, or I'm going to get access to a ray gun through either the mystery box hits that I'm doing to feed Chompy or from Chompy itself. So realistically, you either want to power up your weapon faster to maintain, those later rounds, or essentially you just want to make sure you get access to a ray gun, whether it's the regular one or the Mark II, because it's going to make the run significantly easier. And honestly, once I got access to the ray gun, I didn't really use my main weapon all that much, but it did definitely benefit me to at least consider getting the salvage to keep upgrading it and kind of try to maintain the power of that weapon just in case I needed it for killing a few zombies here and there or just building up some points at some point. I mean, you really never know what you're going to face, and having an extremely weak weapon as a secondary isn't necessarily the best case scenario. It is nice, though, to have a regular weapon like this, too, in case you do get an insta-kill, because, of course, you'll be able to build up some points for free during that, and you won't be utilizing the ammo of the weapon that you're typically using to kind of move through these rounds. So in my mind, I was either going to get my weapon up to legendary as quickly as possible, or the ray gun was going to come in clutch, and I wouldn't focus that much on the actual salvage needed for that weapon, and I would just utilize the ray gun as much as possible. The great thing about the ray gun, too, is once you actually get it, you don't really feel the need to wait to pack a punch to certain levels because the ammo costs the same amount the entire time. So typically, you get it once, you pack a punch it to level 1, and you can utilize it for quite some rounds and build up a ton of points without having to purchase anything else, which I think is incredibly nice. Obviously, if you don't have PhD, you have to be kind of safe because you can eliminate yourself throughout it, but as you guys will see throughout this run, I have no PhD, and I utilize the regular ray gun for a lot of this run, and we were able to pretty much avoid downing ourselves with it for the most part, but we did have other hurdles that we faced much later on. So initially in the rounds, like I said, starting at round 7, I'm basically just trading out weapons with Chompy, trying to work on getting a ray gun, whether it's through the box or through that, and continuing to upgrade my weapon. Now, once you actually get into the 20s, you start getting the super sprinters, things get a little bit scarier. Realistically, I have a pretty good training rotation that I do in this big area. You just kind of run in a circle. The biggest threat you have is at the beginning of the rounds, especially with the Rampage Inducer, because of the speed in which the zombies are spawning in. They don't give you a lot of openings to actually squeeze through, and due to the fact that we don't currently have PhD slider, although it wouldn't have mattered for this run, you don't really have the extra ability to squeeze through those tiny paths. So Rampage Inducer definitely exaggerated the difficulties of the beginning of the rounds, but honestly, starting at round 20, they just got a little bit faster, but I just kept doing the exact same strategy I had the entire time. Keep moving in a pretty much large circle around the area at farm, making my way near where the trap switch is, kind of going back around, and just shooting the ray gun at a distance or as far away as I could keep the zombies from me, making sure that I wasn't doing explosive damage to myself. I honestly didn't face many hurdles, if any at all, in the pretty much first 40 rounds or so, because the strategy that I was using was so effective. And honestly, you just don't have that many zombies in the earlier rounds to where you're getting overwhelmed even at the beginning of the rounds. I would say if I faced any hurdles from like 20 to 40, it would be just at the start of the round, because obviously at that point I didn't have all the zombies trained up, and so it made actually keeping them in, some sort of reasonable fashion or some sort of reasonable group pretty difficult. Once I was able to actually get them grouped up and I wasn't eliminating them a ton at a time, it was actually pretty simple to train them around the room and just eliminate them little by little. I will say some of the times when I actually got insta-kill and I did eliminate a large group of zombies at once, the respawn was definitely very obvious and was causing me a lot of hurdles, so I kind of tried to avoid that for the most part. But honestly, at some point you're just going to want to utilize that secondary weapon just because you want to make sure you never run out of points. With a no perk challenge, it's a lot easier to maintain your points because you're not buying all the perks, but you never know what you're going to face. You never know how much ammo you're going to utilize. You never know how safe you're going to have to try to play it. So for the most part, I just focused on actually upgrading the ray gun once I had a considerable amount of points. I actually, for the most part, wanted to make sure I had double the amount of points that I needed to actually upgrade it. That way, when I did actually choose to purchase that upgrade, I had more than enough to cover the ammo for quite some time. Obviously, you should still be able to build up points consistently, but the worst case scenario is you run out of points, you run out of ammo, and then you just can't continue your run, which is definitely not something I want to have if I'm pushing, to 50 or beyond, attempting it with no perks. Now, for the most part, in the really early rounds, I honestly didn't take advantage of the trap all that much. My strategy for the Ravager round specifically is to utilize the toxic growth, something I'm definitely looking forward to trying more once we get, closer to release or once launch actually happens, because I do want to unlock the augments that are available for that, because I could just see myself utilizing toxic growth quite a bit in this new game. It's not something I really tried at all in Cold War. I didn't really give it an opportunity, so I don't know how effective it was in that game, but I definitely feel like I already found use in the beta, and I'm looking forward to expand on that when it comes to launch, like I said. So basically what I do is I build up the toxic growth, and when that Ravager round starts, I place it in between the switch and the truck, for the trap that is, and it pretty much covers the entire lane there. Then I pull out my melee weapon, I run around in a circle, build up as many of them as possible, then I try to run them through the toxic growth, which does a really good job at eliminating a majority of them. If you get really lucky too, sometimes the loot drops within the toxic growth, and then a lot of them get attracted to that loot, and then they just walk right into the trap or the toxic growth without you even having to funnel them into it. Makes it really easy to eliminate a majority of them. Obviously at the later rounds it becomes a little bit less effective, but that obviously combined with the ray gun made it pretty easy to get through these rounds. And it also allowed me to strategize a little bit better for the future rounds where I wanted to start utilizing the trap, because if I use the trap for the Ravager rounds, that means the next round starting, I wouldn't have access to it, which could become extremely dangerous with something like no perks, because if it was a bear round, or in the case that we get to 40 plus, there would be doppelgas, there'd be nothing to distract all the zombies, and it would just get way too chaotic to actually be able to survive. Now, once we hit round 40, things got pretty interesting. I actually think I made it from round 1 to 41 without any issues happening. It was pretty much flawless up to that point. Like I said, maybe a couple of close calls here and there at the early parts of the rounds, but realistically, the strategy was working super well. The one thing I didn't really think clearly on is when the doppelgas would spawn, how my strategy would work, and it definitely backfired very quickly. The first one, which was round 40, wasn't all that bad because it was just one doppelgas. I was able to eliminate it pretty quick. And then obviously by activating the trap and standing on the truck, majority of the zombies, actually all of the zombies, would just run into the trap, and it was pretty much dealing with those guys. The biggest issue though is if you can't kill the doppelgas fast enough, then it gets on the truck, forcing you off the truck, and then the zombies start coming after you and things just get out of hand really quickly. So one thing I think that I learned a lot about during this run specifically was the spawning of the doppelgas and how I should deal with them. Obviously having combat access can be effective, but you got to be really, really, really fast to get rid of it, because it's just going to cause you hurdles and movement that you don't want to be doing, because it could just end your run. So I did survive round 40 without too many issues, but when round 41 came, I had my very first down, and honestly, I'm not surprised, because the doppelgas came in, I realized there was a Zersa, I wasn't really prepared for the things that I was actually about to face. And even though I popped the trap and jumped on the truck, they kind of forced me off the truck, put me in a position where I wasn't able to maintain my health. And of course, I just end up going down. I was able to recover at this point, and it wasn't all that big of a deal because I was able to get rid of the Xursa, was able to get rid of the Doppel, and once those two were gone, even if I didn't have access to the trap, dealing with the zombies wasn't all that difficult. Now, despite making it like 41 rounds before having our first down, we head into round 42, and again, it's another Doppelgast, and the exact same thing happens to me. I just wasn't really prepared for the Doppelgast to be jumping on the truck, to be hitting me, and like what I could actually expect. And I definitely wasn't targeting them fast enough to eliminate them before they got to me. It was just creating problems where I was getting the zombies to not behave and follow the trap, and instead follow me. And then because I wasn't using perks, it made it incredibly easy to go down, especially with the Rampage Inducer on. The number one thing I would have done differently in this run is at round 40, I probably would have shut that off, and it would have led to me having a less likely chance of going down, even in those moments where I ended up doing so, just because the zombies wouldn't have been exactly as fast as the Rampage Inducer. Unlike previous games, the Rampage Inducer does continue to work as far as the zombie speed is concerned after round 55, and it's incredibly crazy. But round 41, we had our first down. Round 42, I had the exact same thing happen, and honestly, it was pretty frustrating, but I mean, what can you do? It's insanely fast-paced. I'm running the Rampage Inducer. I have no perks. It was to be expected there would be a challenge. Now, I didn't mention this earlier in the video, but realistically, my goal going into this run was to just hit round 50. So round 41, we had it down. Round 42, we had it down. And unfortunately, the same thing happened to me on round 43. I guess you just have to keep going through the trial and tribulations until you figure it out. Luckily, this was the last time we went down for a little while. But then again, at this point, we only have one more self-revive to buy. So it's a bit unfortunate that we're getting down to the point where we're sitting on our last self-revive as early as round 43, because we want 44. Obviously, we want to get to 50. That's the whole goal. That was where I was at. And it was just incredibly frustrating at the start of these rounds how fast these zombies were and just how difficult some of these situations were, just because I wasn't prepared ahead of time. Again, this was my first attempt at doing no perks, so I don't want to hold myself, to some unrealistic standard where I should have done this and I should have done that, because you got to learn. Now, luckily, I was able to recover. Thankfully, we are running no perks, so once again, it was pretty easy to do so, but again, we're finally on this last self-revive. I have so many rounds left to go. Realistically, my cheeks could have never been more clenched than this, but there was always still the possibility that we could continue moving forward and still be able to survive to 50, so I wasn't completely disappointed yet. Basically, from this point forward, my strategy really didn't change. At the start of the round, I made sure the trap was ready to go. I would initiate the trap. The Doppelgast would come in. I'd jump on the truck. I would just focus the Doppelgast as quickly as possible. In some cases, I was actually able to line it up with the trap so it would stand in it and actually take some damage, which helped get through it a little bit faster. But that was honestly the main hurdle, was just the very beginning of the round, making sure the trap was available, hitting the trap, and then getting that Doppelgast out. Obviously, when the Xursa spawn in, it's like a double whammy. You have to deal with the Doppelgast and then deal with the Xursa. But I think if you can eliminate the Doppelgast fast enough, honestly, you should have more than enough time, at least in the earlier rounds, to be able to take on the Xursa before it actually ends up trying to damage you in any way. I found that the ray gun was more than strong enough in most cases, as long as I only had one Xursa, that is, where I wouldn't even have to jump off the truck and I could still eliminate it fast enough. So basically, I just kept doing this exact same strategy round after round. I got a little bit more reliant on the trap once we got to our final self-revive, and then obviously, once we hit round 49, crap hit the fan once again, and we lose our final self-revive. And I honestly thought the round was going to be chalked because I went to stim when I was really low health, and it just stuck the stim into my guy, and I was just holding it there with no ability to shoot or do anything for like multiple seconds. Luckily, it corrected itself. I was able to continue going forward and, obviously keep training and recover a little bit. At this point, though, we have no ability to grab a backup self-revive, so things get a little bit scary. However, we just stay true to the strategy. We get rid of the Xursas. Round 49, I believe, had 2 Xursas, which was insane on top of the fact that I was, relying on having no self-revive at this point. I was very confident almost that at this moment that we were not going to make it to 50. I was like, there's no way I'm dying on 49. This is actually insane. And it was always possible that that could have been the case. But luckily, we maintained. We were able to get rid of the Xursas. We followed the training thing that we'd been doing the entire time. And we were able to not only get the trap to, reactivate or be able to be available again, we were able to finish off the rest of the zombies and hit round 50. Luckily for me, round 50 was a Ravager round. Something I actually learned eventually after a couple of runs of trying just this map in general was a really good way, especially later, closer to 50 and such. You could actually activate the trap at the beginning of the round wait until the very end. Some of the time wouldn't even eliminate all the zombies, but you could jump off the truck toward the end and grab the last handful of zombies and run them around the map until the trap is activatable again. That was pretty much my strategy on making sure the trap would be available at the beginning of each and every round in case I needed it, especially during the Xursa rounds. And it was really nice, again, like I said, utilizing the toxic growth for the amount of time that I did. But eventually I did do the exact same thing with the trap for the Ravager rounds as well, because that did work. Basically, once you knew it was the last couple of them, you jumped off, got their attention, pulled them away from the trap would stop, run them around in that area, eventually getting access to the trap once again. You'd eliminate them, flip the round, and do that same exact process over. I actually got some of my self-revives a little bit mixed up. I thought I lost my last one at 49, but I think we survived round 49 and we actually lost it in 50. Round 50 was the Ravager round, and I tried to throw a monkey bomb, and the monkey bomb animation was entirely too slow. So it led to me not even be able to throw the monkey bomb, and they hit me and I was actually down pretty much immediately. This was on round 50, which was the final round that I was hoping to survive. Obviously, it was the Ravager, so I was able to clean up the round and continue going forward. But this was the point I actually lost the final self-revive. So we lost back-to-back-to-back self-revives in the early 40s. We survived the rest of the 40s without any issue. We made it to round 50 where the Ravagers were, and they got the best of me. And then, obviously, at that point, we no longer have a self-revive. At this point, though, I am extremely excited that I was able to make it to 50. This was the goal that I had. I was pretty sure at a certain point that I wouldn't even make it that far, so I was happy to be there. And then at this point forward, anything else would have been extra credit. I do really think one of the biggest mistakes I made was keeping the Rampage Inducer for the entirety of it. Obviously, it helps the zombies move a little bit faster. Obviously, it can sometimes make training a little bit easier. But at the end of the day, it honestly just made things entirely too fast and too difficult for no perks once I hit about round 40. I think if I'd have turned it off at round 40, there'd have been a good potential we could have made it to 50 without any issues, or even beyond that without any issues. But losing so many self-revives consecutively, we were pretty much just one hit away, or one bad scenario away from being eliminated. And we did continue to survive for a couple more rounds until finally the beginning of the round on round 54, the overwhelming amount of zombies spawning in finally caught up to us. I think I even ran out of stims at some point, which was one of the ways I was able to heal pretty consistently throughout this entire run. So at that point, obviously, we just get hit by a couple of zombies. We're made of paper. Regardless of us having a 3-plater at this point, we don't have Jug. We definitely don't have the augments for Jug. So it was inevitable that we'd just get destroyed eventually. It was a long journey to make it all the way to round 54. We did it without perks. Obviously, I did use a wonder weapon. I utilized the trap. I tried to do anything I could to stay alive. But regardless, I was more than happy to hit round 50. More than happy to get this achievement for myself. All in all, it was a ton of fun to attempt a no perk challenge run on this map. Again, happy that I hit round 50. Even more ecstatic that we made it to 54. And I look forward to attempting this again in the very near future. That is going to wrap things up for us here. Thank you guys for all the support in today's video, all support in the channel. I look forward to seeing y'all in the next one. Peace!